measures passed tonight, particularly regarding the issue of abortion, which has been one of the biggest motivating factors for voters this year, especially for Democrats. The decision desk has projected that California, Michigan, and Vermont will become the first states to enshrine abortion rights into their state constitutions. All right, I'm here with my team. I've got Eamon, I've got Alicia, and Jonathan. It's fun being back with you. We spent a good deal of time on Sunday night, and as we closed out on Sunday night, Jonathan, you made the point that there are polls and there are people. And in the end, none of us are smart enough to know what people do. And people in America tonight have demonstrated their nuance.
Right. I said we needed to be humble. We all those of us at this desk, those armchair pundits at home, needed to show some humility because the people will speak. And what we're finding out, to your point, Allie, is that the American people are nuanced. They are not two-dimensional. They are not necessarily one-issue voters. And I remember folks were saying abortion has crested and no one cares. Well, we're seeing tonight that that's not true, that abortion was a big issue for people. Young people came out and voted when we've grown so used to discounting young voters, but they showed up in big numbers. I can't wait to see where the rest of, I was going to say the night goes, the morning goes, because it's fascinating to see what the American people are saying. And I have to say this. I remember waking up the morning of Election Day 2016, and the mood in the air was of foreboding for me. Something told me it was not going to be a good night from my point of view. This morning I woke up knowing all the stuff that we thought was going to happen, and still I thought, you know, this Election Day, this is fine, this is good. Hearing from the American people tonight, my faith in the American people to be able to see what was happening and then to make their voices heard in a way that is made it possible for us to be sitting here going, wait, what just happened?
Right.
It's fantastic.
The more I hear from the American people, the more I want to hear and the more questions I have. I mean, I feel like we came into this election understanding the sort of basic fundamentals. This was a midterm after a president's first election. We know the way this does ordinarily go. There were crosswinds, though, right? There was Dobbs. There was the summer of action on the part of Democrats. And I'll tell you, I've been out there reporting. I was in Arizona. I was in Nevada. Nobody talked to me about IRA by name. Nobody talked to me about the CHIPS Act by name. There were people who talked about student debt relief. I will say that definitely broke through. But there was more this sense of who has my back. Who cares? That language that Democrats were using in their ads was being repeated back to me in parking lots. And so I think sort of the big question coming out of this is, was it a mix of these factors that determined this vote, or was there one central thing that pushed Democrats through?
And I was going to say, I think there's a few early through lines that we can look at. As you said, American people are nuanced, but they can also hold multiple views of different things at the same time. Right. That means they can understand inflation and economic anxiety, but at the same time, as our colleagues have been pointing out, abortion is still front and center for them. They care about personal rights, individual rights, government overreach. They care about those things, and they're able to parse the politics from their reality, if that makes sense. They're able to actually say, what is it that affects me? And I'm not just going to get whipped into the frenzy by the political leaders of one party over the other. I think another big conversation that is going to emerge from this evening and this morning and the next couple of days, the future of the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
You know, you now have, when you look at the victories of a Ron DeSantis and the losses of the Trump candidates like a Mehmet Oz and a Doug Mastriano, we'll see what happens with Kari Lake. We'll see what happens elsewhere. But if you look at some of these early indicators, that is a reckoning that needs to now happen within the Republican Party.
So let's talk about that, because there are a lot of interesting races for a lot of interesting reasons. But Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona have been where the election deniers have gone, election liars have gone to really plant their flag. In Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer has prevailed. In Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro prevailed by a lot. That wasn't even a close race. We again don't have
New
enough.
York, Kathy Hochul.
That's right, and we don't have enough votes in from Arizona to know what's going on. But those ones were the ones I was looking at the most closely, just to say, do the extreme of the extremists prevail tonight or not? In a number of the mostly contested Secretary of State races in this country, the election deniers have lost in most cases.
Right.
So there's some undercurrent here that Republicans were going all in for that has not paid off tonight. Right.
And America is still a pro-democracy country. You still have a part
at
of
least
it.
at this hour.
At this hour of the night, you still have a big part of either Republican base or Americans generally believe in the fundamental rights of our democracy and to accept the outcome of an election.
And the same way that people may not talk about chips or about IRA, they also may not talk about this in terms of democracy in peril, but they'll say, wow, that candidate seems really far out there. That was something
I think you're entirely right about that. It's not necessarily articulated as I'm going out to vote for the protection of democracy. It's you just seem like you're way out there. All right, he's here. He's here. He's trying to ignore us. He's trying to just keep on working.
We gave him a 10-minute break.
But Steve Kornacki never actually leaves. It's kind of weird because they trained me on how to use that thing in case Steve Kornacki leaves, but Steve Kornacki never leaves. Steve, talk to me. You've heard what we're talking about. Tell us what you're seeing.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. Maybe the place to start here is Nevada, where some more vote is coming in just in the last few minutes. This is Clark County. This is like 70% of the state here. And what just came in was the same-day vote in Clark County, which was advantageous to Adam Laxalt, the Republican. So what you see here, that was the Clark County number. He's cut the gap to single digits there. He'd initially trailed by more than 10 points. And what that's done as well is it's cut the statewide gap here. Catherine Cortez Masto, the incumbent, 50.9%. Laxalt, her Republican challenger, about 4.5 points behind her. Also, notably, a bit of this continues to come in, a bit of a split here between the Senate race and the governor's race. In the governor's race, Steve Sisolak, the incumbent's leading. His margin, though, only 2.5 points statewide. I think we might have just got, we have Washoe County. This is the early and mail vote. This is Reno area. These two counties, Reno and Clark, represent the vast majority of the state here. And again, Cortez Masto getting 50% out of that early and mail vote from Washoe County. In the governor's race, you can see, again, Sisolak not quite as much here. The significance of this Nevada race, obviously, to battle for control of the Senate is we've had one change of party control in a state tonight, and that is Pennsylvania. Democrats win the Pennsylvania Senate race. That's a gain. That's D+1. So just looking at the Senate control math right now, remember they came into the night 50-50, and 50-50 is good enough for Democrats to control the Senate with Kamala Harris breaking the tie. So what is left for Republicans at this point, what that means is not only do they need to find a win in a Democratic seat to offset the gain that Democrats made in Pennsylvania, they need a second win somewhere else to get to 51 and to control the Senate. So where could they get it? Well, let's just go through them quickly now to show you where they stand. In Wisconsin, right now, Ron Johnson holding on to a 40,000 vote lead. There are still some Republican areas with some votes left. I think of the states I just showed you on the map, Republicans may feel best about where Wisconsin stands right now. If Johnson wins, it just means Republicans hold the seat. If Johnson loses somehow in that final batch of votes there in Wisconsin, that's just devastating to Republicans, because then that would be a loss of 2 Republican-held seats. So they need Johnson to hang on there, and then that would bring it to Georgia, to Arizona, and to Nevada. And essentially, Republicans would need to win 2 of those 3, or Democrats would retain control of the Senate. So where do those stand? In Georgia, we are inching closer to 100% of the vote here, now up to 96. And look at this, the gap here between Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock continues to hover just over 10,000 votes, with, critically, that Libertarian candidate Chase Oliver getting 2%. Neither candidate, Warnock nor Walker, at 50%. And if no one goes above 50%, they have a runoff election on December 6th. That looms as a very real possibility in Georgia. Then you take a look at Arizona, where, again, we get big batches of early vote that was dropped off until right before the weekend in Maricopa County, in Pima County. We're starting to get the same-day vote. You see the Democrats jump to a big lead with those initial batches of early vote. Now the question is the same-day vote, and it's going to be reported out apparently hourly from Maricopa overnight. You want to see, are Republicans able to make this competitive with that early vote, with that same-day vote? But we're not going to get an answer, I think, in Arizona for a little while, and it's true in Nevada as well. The counting can take days in both of those states. But basically, Republicans are in a position where they need Johnson to hang on in Wisconsin, and then they need 2 out of these 3, and there is the possibility of a December 6th runoff in Georgia. So if you had a scenario where Johnson hung on, where Republicans won Nevada and where Georgia went to a runoff, then we'd be in a situation where Senate control would come down to the Georgia runoff, and we wouldn't know the answer until the Senate.
Imagine that. Waiting for Georgia. Alaska, you're not worried about. That's not a thing that's going to change control of the Senate.
Well, the issue in Alaska is it's two Republicans who are, and you're starting to see the numbers come in here. Kelly Tshibaka, Lisa Murkowski, they're going to do this ranked choice voting instant runoff that'll take place later. But you could see right away that it's two Republicans gobbling up almost 90%.
Let me ask you something about Wisconsin. We're still waiting on that. We've got a lot of count in Wisconsin but is Milwaukee all in?
What we got in, it's not all in, no. You can see about 80%. What we got from Milwaukee, though, was usually at the very end of the night or close to it, the absentee, the mail vote comes in. And we got that a little while ago. Barnes won it. It was something on the order of 55,000 to 7,000, something like that. So banked a huge chunk of votes from that. And you see in some of these other counties here, core Republican counties right outside Milwaukee, there's also vote to come. There's a lot of pockets here where Johnson can also gain votes here and potentially offset what Barnes gets out of Milwaukee. Barnes is not over yet. This hasn't been called, but Johnson can point to some things here that are promising for him. And again, this is a state where the governor's race has already been called for the Democrat. Tony Evers has been reelected, so you do see Johnson outperforming the Republican gubernatorial candidate by about 3 points.
Steve, thank you. I think one of the important part here for Steve is that there's a lot of stuff that's still going to happen tonight. We're going to see, particularly in Arizona, which is moving very, very slowly. We've gone from 53 to 54 to 55% over the course of about 2 hours. So it's moving slowly, but we will probably get updates on that through the course of the night and learn more about the potential Senate control as it relates to Arizona. Stay with us. We're back after a quick break.